Our webinar this evening. Tonight, we're going to talk about how to take a consultative approach to our sales conversations with patients so that we can grow a private practice and transform the consults and our communication. So, first of all, thank you to the FMC and Dentistry team for hosting this evening's webinar. I'm really looking forward to speaking with you all. We'll be on for about an hour. And then I'm going to move to Q&A. So as we go through the session, please do drop your questions into the question box. And we've got a couple of polls that we're going to get going with shortly as well. Now, before we start, I'd love for you just to take a moment to think about what you're looking to achieve from this evening's webinar. What I'm hoping to do is just plant some seeds with you this evening about how you can change your consultations, the approach to communicating with patients, so that it just starts to improve case acceptance, improves your confidence and your consistency in that communication with your patients. So really tonight is about sowing seeds and getting you to think slightly differently throughout our webinar. And you will have seen this already, but the outcomes for this evening, we're really looking at how you can grow your private practice and really focusing in on this area of patient consultations, because that is such an opportunity for many clinicians and many of our practice owners and practice teams. And really, we're going to look at some key principles to help you better understand your patient's needs. We're going to teach you a communication system called the Inspire communication system, and really think about how to make your conversations and your consults with patients more relevant and more valuable. Now, some of you might be hearing a dog bark in the background, and it is my daughter's dog. I'm dog sitting this evening, last minute emergency dog sitting. She will calm down, but just in case you can hear a dog, it is my end. And then the final thing we're going to look at is asking for commitment, and a really interesting way to ask for commitment from patients so that you feel less pressure and they feel less pressure in the consult. And our GDC development outcomes this evening are A, B, and D. There you get 1 hour of CPD for this evening, and there are some questions that you'll be sent after the webinar just to sense check for the CPD accreditation. Okay, so for those of you who, for whom maybe this is the first time you've had a webinar with me, or the first time that you've seen me speaking, you'll know already my name's Justin Leigh. I founded the company Focus4growth about 5 years ago. And what you might not know is that my background is actually dentistry. I trained originally as a dental technician, and I did that for around 5 years, served my apprenticeship, and then finished and moved into sales, into dental sales. And I was working on a territory, and then I worked for 3 different companies in a dental sales role, and then ended up in more strategic sales roles in dentistry. And then beyond that, I moved into leadership and was running sales organizations and business teams. And I did that inside and outside of dentistry. And what I learned, worked for some very large corporate organizations. And what I learned was that there is a structure to communication. There's a structure to a successful sales conversation. And there's obviously a structure to leadership and coaching. And a lot of that isn't obvious. So the work that I do now in the business that I form, Focus4growth, is start to take some of those really best practice principles from the corporate world, start to bring them into the dental market and bring them particularly into practice teams and to business teams. And so the work we do is program based. And what we find, and what I found personally in my career over the years, is that when you've been doing work and you've been working in a role for a certain amount of time, it's really easy to start to lose consistency and start to lose motivation, energy, and enthusiasm. And actually, the seeds for regaining that are quite straightforward. It's about getting back to some of the fundamentals that we know are important. And so the work we do with our clients really is about helping them to, re-engage with the work they do, think about the structure and the way in which they can perform better to increase results and consistency in the practice. And the results that we find our clients get are really quite impressive. If anybody is interested in connecting with me, then please feel free. You can scan my Linktree code here, and that will get you straight through to all of the different connections that on my social channels, website, all of that good stuff. And the other thing that's happened over the last few years is, some great recognition externally from my business, because it's great to have, the work we do recognized internally, but actually external validation is much more valuable for us. And I've been kind of blessed to have won some business awards locally, the SME, kind of small and medium enterprise business awards. And I'm actually a finalist in the National SME Awards in December, in a couple of weeks' time, actually. So I'm all fingers are crossed for that awards ceremony next month. I'm also a finalist in the British Dental Industry Awards as well. So 2 awards in 1 month, or 2 awards ceremonies in 1 month. So looking forward to those. And for some of you may have seen that I also authored 2 books. So the first book I wrote was a book for sales professionals, and teaching them how to really think about their sales approach and take a consultative approach to communication with customers. And then because my network's quite strong in dentistry, I had a number of dentists read the book. And I had multiple requests from dentists asking if there was a book that would cover the same models, but how to apply it in the dental practice. And so after a while, I thought, actually, that makes a lot of sense to really think about the experience I've got, the work I do with clients, and write a second book, which we did. Was published earlier this year. It's called Inspire, Consult, Sell. And you can get that on Amazon, either as a Kindle or as a paperback. So we've had some really great successes so far in the business. So that's a little bit about me. I'd love to know a bit about you. We've got a number of people on the webinar this evening. Before I go to that, Michael, thank you, Michael. I feel like I need to know what breed of dog you are dog sitting. Thank you, Michael. Believe it or not, it is a Pommer Poo. So that's a cross between a Pomeranian and a poodle. So Pommer Poo is the dog I'm dog sitting this evening. And she is fantastic, except when she barks when I'm hosting webinars. So I've got this poll that I'd like to ask you. And so you'll see a poll pop up now. So we're just trying to get a sense of who's on the call this evening. So which best describes your role? And there'll be a number of different positions of people on the call tonight. Are you a practice owner or practice principal? Are you a practice leader or a practice manager? And I always distinguish between leadership and management. We won't cover that this evening, but there's a big difference between leaders and managers. But are you a practice leader or practice manager? Are you a partner in a practice? Are you an associate in a practice? Are you a TCO? Or are you a dental nurse? Or is there a role I've missed? And actually, you just like to drop into the questions or the chat box the name of your role if I've missed the role that you have. So we're just letting that poll continue in the background. Let's have a look. I'm going to give you just a moment or two to think about your answers. I'm not going to end that just yet, because I know some people might struggle to just find the button. So I'll give you a moment or two longer. Okay. So we've got some results coming in. Let me just share those with you. That's great. Got a really great mix tonight on this webinar. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us. I should have said that already, but thank you so much for joining us. So let me end that. That's fine. So let me share these results with you. You should be able to see the poll results. So we've got around 27% of people are practice owners this evening, and principals around 18%, partners 9%, associates 36% of associates this evening. Brilliant. Welcome, everybody. And about 9% of TCOs. So really a great group this evening. So a real mix of different experiences in our audience this evening. Thank you so much. And thanks for engaging in the polls as well. So second poll, back to back, one after the other. Second poll, let me just get that published now. Let me share that with you. So second poll is about the challenges you face with your patient consultations. So there are a number of challenges that people face, and they share them with me in the work that we do. These are kind of our top 5. So I'd really be interested in your experience. So the first is discussing prices for treatment options. The next is asking for commitment from the patient to start treatment. So that final stage of commitment. Are you going to do this? Third is articulating the benefits of treatment with us, our practice, and us in particular, rather than the patient, for those patients who might, shop around or be looking at different options. So how well you articulate why your practice. Fourth is around asking the right questions and in the consultation so that you understand what the patient really needs. And then finally, fifth is creating the best possible patient experience. Now, if there's something bigger than that's on your mind or is a priority for you, then please put it in the question box or in our chat box, and we'll make sure that we cover that this evening as part of our webinar. So let me gather some results. Let's have a look and see what people are saying. Okay, great. That's really interesting. Let me share that with you so that you can see it. So joint first and second is to 25% each is discussing prices for treatment options. So thank you for sharing that. Second is asking for commitment to start treatment. So that's interesting. Thank you. Third then is asking the right questions. So thank you. Fourth is joint fourth is articulating the benefits of treatment and creating the best possible patient experience with 15.6% each, very specific. Okay, excellent. Thank you all very much. That's great. It gives me context for the rest of our conversation and webinar this evening. Okay, so here's what normally comes up. I run a lot of these workshops with different customers and clients and groups, and this is what normally comes up for us. So number one is normally asking for commitment to start treatment, and that is pretty consistent with your results this evening. I'm just going to check that that you can still hear and see me. I've got a bit of a technical glitch my end, I think. Can everyone still hear and see?
We can still hear and see you, Justin.
You can?
We can, yeah. You're loud and clear.
Okay, great. Thank you. Sorry, Laurie. I was, my end, things have gone black. So I'm going to have to just double check that. Sorry, Laurie. Bear with me a second. Sorry, everybody. Bear with me a second. For some reason, my monitors and screens have gone completely dark. But Laurie, can you still see my screen and the presentation?
They'll see the slides, yep, and your camera feed and audio. Are both of your screens gone or just one of them?
Both of them. Let me just turn it off and turn it on again to see if that gives me a reset. That's really strange. Sorry about this, everybody. I am going to... There we go. Right, we're back. I think we're back. Hold on a sec. No, we're not. Okay, just give me 1 second. I'm not sure. This is a first for me. My screens are not showing my slides, so I'm literally a bit in the dark.
Is it a case of you've got a laptop plugged into two separate monitors? Do you want to try and move it to the laptop, maybe, if you unplug your docking station?
I might have to do that. Yeah, thank you, Laurie. Let me just try that let me try and do this instead. Hold on a sec. So I'm really sorry, everybody, about this. This is okay. So, can you? Is that working, Laurie?
Yep, you're still loud and clear.
Okay, brilliant. Apologies, everybody. I now have one screen back on my laptop, so let me carry on. So this is what normally happens. So number one is asking for commitment to start treatment. That's the kind of primary challenge that comes up in consultations. Number two is asking the right questions. We have about 18% of people saying normally that is their predominant challenge. And then third is articulating the benefits of treatment with our practice. So they're the three areas that we're really going to focus in on for this evening's webinar. And very much alignment with what you've discovered in your own polls this evening. Slight difference in discussing pricing for treatment options. And we'll talk a little bit about that before we finish this evening as well. Okay, thank you, everybody. That's great. So we also have in Focus4growth, we use this tool. It's like a diagnostic tool called the Patient Experience Scorecard. And what it is a series of assessment statements, 36 statements that we invite people to kind of rank themselves on. And from that information, from that data, we can then provide you with a personal development report. And this is completely free. So this evening, at the end of this evening's webinar, I'll share the link with you to the Patient Experience Scorecard, and I'll invite you to take that scorecard so that you can get your own professional development report and your own scores. And some of the questions that we ask, there's key focus areas that we kind of discover through the Patient Experience Scorecard. Number one is interesting. So the first one that comes up is that as a practice team, we need to revisit our patient's experience. And believe it or not, 75% of practices say yes, they either agree or strongly agree that they need to revisit the patient experience. And to some degree, you would expect that, because if practices want to continually elevate and improve the patient experience, you want to revisit it on a regular basis. So that's a positive indicator around people, practice leaders looking to really improve the quality of the patient experience. The next one is about asking the right questions. So this statement specifically says, I ask high quality questions that elicit my patient's greatest needs and priorities. And 60% of people saying that they do that, but of course, by default, it means that 40%, so 4 out of 10 people saying that they actually struggle with questioning of the patient. And then third is around articulating benefits of the patient treatment options our practice provides. 66% of people saying that they can articulate them, but of course that means that 35% of people actually find that quite difficult to do that. So nearly 4 out of 10. And then finally, the poll that we, number one for us tonight is confident to ask patients for commitment to start treatment. And that's doing that every time. And only it's a 50-50 split. So 51% of people saying, yeah, I ask every time, but almost 50% saying, that's a challenge for me. So we're going to look at how we address these key focus areas this evening. But our top three, before we go into solving the problem, until we really understand the problem, it's really easy trap for us to fall into. So we're going to just look at the problem for each of these first, then we're going to look at how we resolve and address each of them in turn. So challenge number one, asking the right questions and asking the right questions. So I've now reordered them in the order at which they flow, right? So asking the right questions links to being able to present treatments options effectively, which then links to being able to ask for commitment from patients. So we address them in the right order. So asking the right questions. Why do we want to ask the right questions? So that we understand the patient's needs. That's the most important part of our process. And because very often when we are in, specialist roles like dentistry and we're professionals, we tend to feel this pressure to have all of the answers and this pressure to want to direct the patient consultation. And so when we have that pressure, we tend to talk more than listen. And patients then don't get the chance to explain what they're thinking. And what they're thinking is most important, because that's what's going to drive their behavior, drive their decision making. And because they're not able to explain that, they don't then feel listened to, heard, or understood. So because dental teams, and this is no fault of their own, it's just something they haven't learned, they don't ask the right questions. They don't train themselves to listen to patients carefully, not as effectively as they would like. And so then what happens is that the treatment recommendations they make to the patient don't appear to be tailored or relevant. And so then patients start to think, well, this is just generic. It's the same treatment for everybody. And they don't realize the specialism. So really what we need to focus in on, and we'll look at this evening, is how do we ask the right questions? Because that's halfway to solving the problem with the patient. Once we've asked the right questions and understood what the patient tells us, that's half of the problem solved for us and for them. So challenge number two is about, so once we understand what the patient needs, how do we then articulate the benefits of treatment specifically with us? And a kind of tag on that comes along with that very often is without it sounding like a sales pitch. Without it sounding like I'm trying to get the patient to do something they don't want to do. And Because we can be unsure about the differentiation of treatment options and positioning that in the right way without feeling as if we're selling or pitching, what happens is that people tend to talk about features, what something does, and they talk about what something does without asking the right questions of the patient. And then you feel as if you're the one that's pitching. And it's a really uncomfortable feeling. Nobody likes that feeling. So when you find yourself in that situation, the default from the patient is they start to focus on price. Because when someone feels like they're being sold to, the natural response is, well, how much is it? And that's just how we all are wired. You'll notice you do this yourselves in high value interactions as well. And when we don't understand value, we focus on price. And that is the challenge for us and for patients. And so then discussing price and treatment fees becomes uncomfortable for us, becomes uncomfortable for the patient. And so then patients will say things like, well, let me shop, I'm shopping around, or let me think about it. I need to kind of talk to my partner or talk to somebody else about it. And they start to shop around or do nothing, right? So they'll either shop around or do nothing. And that's a bit of a trap that we can find ourselves and the patient in. And so thinking about this principle, what we really need to recognize is there's a load of things that we think are important when we're talking about treatment options with patients. There's all this sphere of stuff we think is important. But actually, there's stuff that interests the patient that is driving their decision making. And it's very often different from what we think is important. And our job in the consultation is to find the overlap, of what we think is important and what interests the patient and is driving their decision making. And that is very often the kind of key to really helping the patient make the right decision and for us to feel more relevant and valuable in the consult. Challenge number 3 is about asking for commitment to start treatment. Now, these 3, as you can tell, are linked, right? So we don't understand what the patient needs. We're not clear on articulating the benefits of treatment. Guess what? It's really awkward to ask for commitment, because if we don't feel like we've done a good job in the consult, we're not going to want to ask for commitment from the patient. So even when patients have a clear desire for treatment, and if we haven't taken the time to clarify their needs, position treatment really well, really in a really compelling and relevant way, then patients will resist. Okay, so and naturally, so will we. If we were in a sales conversation or a conversation with somebody that's providing a service for us and we haven't felt truly understood and they haven't positioned it in a way that's really meaningful and relevant, then we would resist, right? We do resist. That's the nature of the kind of buying and selling dynamic between us and someone providing a service. So what happens is that then dental teams, and this isn't just dental teams, this happens in a lot of business teams, they will inadvertently overtalk and pitch, and it's not intentional. It's an inadvertent. So we overtalk and pitch treatments, and then what happens is that because we don't understand the patient or the other person, we're not convincing. Sometimes we don't convince ourselves, and if we can't convince ourselves, we can't convince the patients. And so patients will then opt to think about it, and they think about it, don't commit, and then everything becomes less certain. And over time, what we find happens, and you saw this in the scorecard results, and we've heard it in tonight's poll, if you have a few of these situations where it's awkward, you've asked for commitment, the patient's resisted, then you stop asking. And over time, then you kind of think, do you know what? I'm sure I'm missing opportunities here because I'm leaving the consult open-ended. So we're going to talk about how you address this evening. So if you don't ask, so I love this quote, if you don't ask, the answer is always no. So if you stop asking, the answer is always no, unless the other person makes the decision by themselves. And that happens more rarely than you would think. So the consequence for practice teams that we work with, treatment acceptance rates tend to be lower or inconsistent. Recommendations are less compelling. Patient experience, team performance, and results just aren't reaching the full potential of the practice. And so when we're not confident to communicate with patients, we start to feel hesitant. Really interesting dynamic in the communication. process. When we feel hesitant, people sense it. Patients start to sense that hesitance. And so we then struggle to ask for commitment. That means we can't grow a private patient list or private treatments that we want to offer. And all of a sudden we start to feel stuck. We're stuck doing reactive dentistry. Consults feel just functional and general rather than transformational. Patients feeling different about treatment with us. Patient satisfaction's okay, but it's not great. You know, it kind of sits there around the middle. It's just okay. And of course, practice revenue then plateaus and growth opportunities are lost. So we really have to start to address these key issues because there's lots of knock-on cascading effects for us. So then what we have to do is to think now, we've talked about the problems. Now we have to change the way that we're looking at the current situation. When we change the way we look at things, the things we look at will change, and that's so true. So we have to have a kind of change in perspective for ourselves. And so let's take a few kind of more formal piece of data. So importance of communication in dentistry, as you'll all know your GDC principles, I'm sure. And GDC principle number 2, it's so important, it's number 2, is to communicate effectively with patients. And moreover, it says, give patients the information they need in a way they can understand so that they can then make more informed decisions. And that really is our responsibility. So if a patient has all of the information, then they can make the right decision for them. And very often, if we haven't gone through the right process in the consultation and the patient doesn't have all the information, they might be making, you know, what is a reactive decision rather than a more, you know, informed decision if we were able to structure the consult in a better way. So let's talk about how that works for the patient. So we have this principle around the patient journey, and it's a very overused term, the patient journey. So I just want to break it down for us this evening and really think about what happens in the patient's decision-making process. And you will all be familiar with this term. You know, we talk about leads coming into the practice. We talk about, you know, funnels. And one of the things that I learned years ago in business is this whole principle around, you know, we have this traditional funnel that looks like this, and we expect people to draw themselves down through the funnel and for gravity to work the patient or customers through a funnel. And as I'm sure many of you will know, it doesn't often happen like that. Normally what happens is that gravity acts against us. So in our patient journey, we work the opposite way around, from the bottom up, and we have this responsibility to draw patients up through our funnel because they're not going to fall and draw themselves down through it. It doesn't work like that, unfortunately. I wish it did. I wish it did, but it doesn't. So the patient enters their relationship with us or the consult or the situation completely unaware, normally either that they have a requirement for treatment or something that they're looking to address. Normally they start unaware, or they might have some awareness, but they're not fully aware that treatments are tailored. They're not fully aware of the capability, all of the work that goes into it. So our job in those early stages is just to make sure that we're well prepared for the consult, well prepared with the right information for the patient, so that we can start to increase awareness in the patient of either the need or you know, just a bit more information about how treatment works. And when we've got the right preparation, we've got the right messaging in place, we're able to move the patient from unaware to attentive. And when we've got the patient's attention, our job then in those early stages of the relationship with the patient is to share some insights. So to start to educate and inform the patient around, you know, some of the principles of treatment, not to talk about the treatment or to pitch it or to start, you know, selling, but to share some insights about data, about perhaps the market, about perhaps some of the other patient experience that we have. And the reason we start with insights is because when the patient's attentive and we share insight, we move them from attentive to interested. So this is following the patient's natural decision-making process. And once the patient's interested, at that point, our job is to ask them questions and discover their needs. What is it they're really looking to achieve through this process? What are they really, what are the kind of considerations, maybe the concerns, maybe some of the reservations that they have, and help them to articulate it. because as they start to articulate their needs, they move themselves through their own journey from interested to creating some desire to change. And that's so important. Our questions guide the patient through their own journey from interest to desire. And it's only when we fully understand the patient's needs, they've had the opportunity to discuss them and articulate them themselves, that we should start to talk about what treatment solutions are available. And then we're able to link the treatment solutions to the needs the patient's told us they've had. And by doing that, the patient moves themselves from a position of desire to wanting to take action. Actually, this is something I really want to pursue and progress. And when the patient is ready to take action, that's when we'd say, okay, well, let's make a proposal around what treatment looks like. And, for many clinicians, the big challenge, and for many, we're doing this in the clinical context this evening, but this is the same in customer interactions. It's the same in any consultative conversation that you have with the right person, the right service provider. Very often the big mistake, and I made this mistake many times earlier on in my career, was that we start to pitch and make proposals to patients or customers who are only attentive. And when you've only just got someone's attention to start to talk about what a treatment proposal looks like, you can see that they've got 3 or 4 steps to progress through in their own decision making before they're ready to hear a proposal. And if you take one thing from this evening's webinar, please let it be this: to recognize where your patient is in their journey and make sure that the process, the communication process you are going through with them, matches where they are in the journey. And as you guide the patient through those stages of their own journey, they'll be much more willing, much more receptive, much more likely to want to progress to treatment. And so when you make a proposal to the patient at the right stage in their journey, then they're ready to start treatment. In fact, they'll be ready and willing to start treatment. They'll want to start treatment. It's at that point we initiate the first step. So that initiation could be, taking a deposit. It could be booking them in for the first stage of treatment. It could be handing them over to our TCO so that the TCO is then ready to initiate the payment and the process that then starts treatment with us. And actually, long term, when you think beyond just this initial cycle, what we're really looking to do is to create loyal patients, to think beyond just individual treatments, to have patients that really trust and respect us and our brand and our practice. And we do that through a process of continual reflection, improvement, learning, and development of our services and the approach that we take with patients. So you can see this is a really complete model. Now, that's the ideal process that we follow with patients. What we find happens in usual circumstances is that really most practices will find themselves feeling a little unprepared for those conversations with patients. They do a great introduction, introducing themselves and the practice and potentially the treatment. They don't ask sufficient questions, either no questions or limited questions or closed questions. We'll talk about this shortly. They're genuinely trying to solve a problem for patients, but they end up finding themselves pitching. And then we have this indecision from patients. And if you repeat that cycle, you really are missing out on lots of opportunities that should be, really transformational for patients, but you don't get the chance to deliver that transformation. So through using the right approach, we find a way to transform communication with patients and commitment from patients. And this is the model that we use. This model is called Inspire. And at the heart of the model here, you'll see we have relationships, developing rapport, connecting with the patient, because people will only deal with people they like. They'll only buy from people they like. Then we've got our preparation model, as you'll remember from our patient journey. Then we have our insight. Then we ask questions and discover needs. Then we talk about a solution. Then we make a proposal that the patient will agree to. And you'll see that the cycle here has multi-directional arrows. So if we get to making a proposal and the patient says, I'm not sure, or I'd need to think about it, we just circle back to ask questions. Okay, no problem at all. What specifically do you need to think about? How can we help you make those decisions? So you're using the model to really guide the patient's thinking and decision making. And then when you've made a proposal and the patient agrees, the final stage, as we said, is to initiate some form of action. because very often people will say yes in the moment, and unless we help them to make the next commitment, it's very easy for them to get just kind of lost in all of the other things that are going on in their life. So we make sure that that final stage is initiate action. And then we talked about reflection, improvement, and you see this as a cycle. So we continue this cycle with every patient, and even with, you know, patients from one consult to the next. We follow this as a process flow. It really helps us to improve the impact of our consultations and communication with patients. So let's talk a little bit about how we do that in practice. So commitment, this was something I learned in my career twice. First time I learned this was when I was in a sales role and I hadn't really been selling particularly effectively. I'd been pushing solutions on customers and kind of pitching things that weren't really as compelling or as tailored as they should have been. The second time I learned this principle was when I was in leadership and managing a team, and I was trying to direct, push and cajole my team, and actually what I should have been doing was coaching them. And there's a real theme here for the work that we do at Focus for Growth, the approach we take, and that is to remember that for all people, whether that's your patients, my clients, our team members, people, partners that we work with, commitment from anybody should be pulled, not pushed. So people should feel inspired to work with us, inspired to commit to treatment with us. And remembering that can really help you to think about the way you structure your communication and your consults, that commitment from other people is pulled, it isn't pushed. So let's address our three challenges. So number one was asking the right questions as the biggest challenge generally. So let's talk about the questions. So where this fits in our model for the Inspire sales process is here in the needs discovery stage. And really important, this stage is vital. What we have to do at this point is just to create some space for the patient. So we slow down, we open up the patient conversation, we have this, you know, attitude of seeking to understand the patient and recognize that everything we need to serve the patient at the highest level, to really meet their needs, exists in the patient's mind. The patient knows what it takes to have their needs completely satisfied. The only way for us to understand it, to get it out from the patient, is to ask questions and to listen. And we won't go into the skill of listening. It is a skill, but I'll remind you of this. You may not have seen this quote before, but remind you that how important it is when we're listening to be silent. And, you know, silent and listen are made up of the same letters. Arguably, you can't do one without doing the other. So learning to just pause, stop talking, create some silence and really listen is important. It doesn't matter how good your questions are. If you don't listen, then you may as well not have asked the question. So listen and silent, really important to remember those two principles. Love this quote from Richard Branson, someone I admire very much. Listen more than you talk. Nobody learned anything by hearing themselves speak. Bit ironic with me speaking on a webinar this evening, but you get the point, right? You get the point. So from a needs discovery stage, thinking about question structure, okay? We need to understand the different types of questions and when we use them in the process with the patient. So the three types of questions: open questions, probing questions, and closed questions. So open questions are those questions that really open the conversation with the patient, get them talking about their needs. Probing questions are when the patient tells us something, we think, you know, there's a bit more to that than just what they're saying. So we kind of stay on the topic and we probe a little bit deeper, get them to tell us a bit more about the topic or about that. You know, maybe they're getting married, maybe it's their birthday, maybe it's a big event they're looking for. Tell us a bit more about that. Tell me why that's important for you. So we just probe a bit deeper because that really helps them to tune into their own desire and motivation to change. And then the final questions are closed questions. Closed questions can be answered simply yes or no. And, you know, when do we ask those types of questions and where? Well, let me share this with you because this can be just this chart in itself can get you really thinking. We talked about the patient journey and the stages of our process aligned with the patient journey. So here's how it works. We ask open questions at the start of our conversation with patients to get them talking, to get all the information flowing. so that we really understand what the patient needs. Then we ask probing questions in the middle of the process, just to make sure that we truly understand what the patient's looking for, what their motivations and desires are. And then we ask closed questions at the end to gain commitment to treatment. And once you structure your questions in that order, aligned with the journey we know the patient makes, it makes a huge difference to the effectiveness of your consultations. So huge impact and benefit there. So just remember, open, probing, closed questions aligned with where the patient is in their journey. So next, we look at articulating benefits of treatment. So how do we make sure that what we tell the patient really does resonate? And for us on our model, we obviously go into this in a lot more detail when we're on our programs, but hopefully you're getting a real flavor for the theme of the way that we structure the sales process aligned to the patient's needs, which is most important. Next stage of our process is the solutions discussion. So we understand what the patient needs. We've asked the right questions in the right order through the consultation, and the patient is kind of able to articulate that really clearly. Once they've done that and we're able to understand, then we start to talk about a solution. But the caveat is that it's only after we understand the patient's needs that we discuss that treatment solution, and then we match it to their needs. So that's really important, that we understand the patient's needs, match the treatment solution to their needs. And this is so important, because if we can't understand our own value and articulate that value to patients, then cost is always going to be the highest priority in the mind of the patient. And if you find yourself having a lot of cost-based discussions about treatment, it will be because the patient hasn't quite figured out the differentiation and the value that you offer. And one of the ways that we think about this in 3 phases. So we think about features of the product or the service or the treatment. Okay, so features, what does it do? We think about advantages. Why is that better than other options for the patient? And then we think about benefits. What's the value in it for the patient? Not for us, for the patient. And features, if we just talk features, and this is again one of those traps. Lots of people just talk about the features. Oh, the product, it'll do this, the treatment does that, it'll enable this, or the lab does this part of it, or we take a scan, or whatever. From the patient's perspective, completely trivial information. They don't understand it, it doesn't resonate, it doesn't mean anything to them. What we have to do is start to translate that into advantages. If it does this, if this is how we do it, the reason we do that is because the advantage for you is it's completely tailored. It's completely relevant for you. It's a bespoke, solution, product, treatment for you. And then we talk about benefits, and what that means for you is that you get the absolute best result. You get that smile that you're looking for. You get the shade or the color that you're looking for. And really being able to articulate treatment in a way that says all 3 of these different components are important. Features, what it does, advantages, why it's better, benefits, the value the patient gets. Really, really important that we join those dots up for the patient as we explain and articulate treatment, because if we don't, the patient doesn't join up the dots for themselves automatically. It just doesn't happen. And of course, linking that back to the needs they said they had. So you can see how it's kind of a combination of art and science, making sure that we join these 2 things up. And then once we've done that, we've asked the right questions, we're following the process, we've articulated the benefits of treatment, done it in a way that's really compelling. And the best way to do that is to just structure the way that you kind of position treatments, so that we have a really nice structure that enables us to do that really effectively for different treatment options. And then finally, the issue for us is, how do we ask for commitment more effectively from every patient every time? And this, in terms of our sales process, you look at the model, it fits here under proposal agreement, when we're about to make a proposal for treatment. And so we're kind of at the penultimate stage of the conversation or consultation structure. And what we're going to do is check in with the patient. So we've asked their needs, we understand them and articulate them. We've talked about treatment, how that works, what the best option is. And then there's this, for a lot of people, this awkwardness How do I move from that to then asking if the patient's ready to go ahead with treatment? And there's this principle in sales called a pre-close. And I hate the term pre-close because it sounds really kind of salesy, and I can't stand the term. So instead, we call it pre-commitment. So it's a pre-commitment stage. It's asking permission to gain commitment. So you're not going to say, will you start treatment? You're going to ask, if I asked, would you say yes, right? So the example of that is that we might say something like, so we've talked about the treatment options. Is there anything else we need to cover before we discuss a treatment proposal? So we're just asking the patient, have we got everything? Are we ready? Are you ready? If I was going to make a treatment proposal, are you ready? And from that position, the patient then is able to say, oh, well, actually, I'm not sure about X, Y, or Z. So what we're doing here is just checking with the patient before we ask for commitment. Now, they might say, yeah, actually, that sounds really good. I'm good to go ahead. In which case, it's really natural to then ask for commitment. But because we're just asking this permission to gain commitment, that just changes the whole dynamic of the consult. We feel more comfortable. The patient feels more comfortable. It's much more natural to have that conversation. Another option, if I make a treatment proposal, so if I were to make a treatment proposal, have you got everything you need to make a decision today? So we're just really naturally asking a question that allows us to flow into gaining commitment. And then there's a third option here. If we went ahead with what we've discussed, would you be ready to decide today? So it's just you can see how naturally these questions flow, and they just encourage the patient then to move through this final stage of being ready to take action. And if we've followed the steps, if we've asked great questions to discover their needs, if we've positioned treatment in a way that's compelling, and then we ask for this pre-commitment, you can start to see how all of these building blocks just join up so that it makes your consults much more effective, much more persuasive for the patient. They kind of feel like they've really been on a journey with you. And so then you know how to do this last piece, but you would make sure that your proposal is really clear, make sure that all the relevant information is included, explain the treatment pathway, number of visits, the duration of each visit, what they need to prepare before and after treatment, make sure that you cover pricing and what's included, what value they get from it, payment options, appointment terms, if people reschedule, within a period of time, or if they fail to attend, what are the charges they breach, and just make sure that the patient's really clear on that before you then go ahead and book them in for that first treatment, or hand them over to your TCO if that's the process in your practice. This is a really important part of the patient experience, setting those clear expectations as a final stage in the consultation with the patient. And of course, then finally, I love this phrase, enthusiasm has a half-life. We all have the best of intentions, and very often, even when we're really motivated to do something, we don't always follow through. So then we find that patients in particular, may say yes in the moment. Unless you get that commitment there and then the life that they're leading takes over. Emails come in, the partner says, oh, well, hold on a minute, we've got to just think about X, Y, or Z. And before you know it, you've got a patient that's kind of lost interest and they've started to look elsewhere, or they don't pursue treatment altogether. So actually helping the patient to make that decision that's going to transform, their smile, transform the result they're looking for is really important. We help them make that decision, that commitment to themselves in the moment when they're ready with us in practice. Okay, so at this point, I'd love to hear your biggest takeaways. Just start to think about your key actions to focus on from this evening's workshop. I've got a couple other things I want to cover with you before we finish. But before I do that, I'd love for you to just take a moment to process your biggest takeaways. You can put them in the questions box if you like, please. We'll cover those in about 5 minutes' time. I've just got, as I say, a couple other things to cover. But think right now, before we do our final topic, I'd love for you to just capture it for a moment, take a moment, capture your actions, capture your thoughts on this evening's webinar. We've covered quite a lot of ground this evening. I hope you're already starting to join up the pieces. hopefully you've got some key insights that you can start to use. So capture those for yourself and drop them into the questions box if you would, and we'll come back to those in just a second. Now, normally, when I get to this stage of conversations with clients, with webinar attendees and participants, and thanks again for joining us this evening, what people will say to me is that's been great, Justin. There's a lot to take on here, and it's clear there's a lot more to learn. If we wanted to learn more, what would that look like? So if you'll indulge me, I'd love to share with you what we share with clients and people that do want to work in greater detail with us and our teams. So in January, we will launch this program that we're really proud of. We've been working on this for a long time, called the Practice Growth Academy. And we've worked on this with bespoke clients, but we haven't run an open program before. So we've done quite a bit with corporates and with organizations, but we haven't run open programs before. So we're launching this open program in January. And it's a 2-day residential at an incredible location called Y Boston Lakes. It's a hotel in Cambridgeshire. And the way that this program works is we have a combination of different factors that help us to really make this transformation work for clients and participants. The first is that we invite everybody to go through our patient experience scorecard, which I shared with you earlier in our presentation. And once you've gone through the scorecard, you will get a personal development report with some specific recommendations about where you should focus to improve and transform your consults. Once you've completed the scorecard, you'll get that full report. That then allows you to start to think about those specific development areas as you enter the course. And we start with 2 days immersive training and coaching workshops. And one of the things that we've found works really well with our corporate programs is to assign people accountability partners. And we've really kind of opened this principle up in our open workshops as well. So we will be inviting everybody that comes on to the program to work with one other person that is also on the program as an accountability partner. And we're going to give you some structure about how to work together, and we'll give you some coaching tips on how to implement. And we're going to encourage and invite people to really think beyond the 2 days, to start to think about how do we implement, how do I make sure that the content, the principles, the models, the transformation in learning translates into practice. And we do that through accountability partners throughout the program, not just in the 2 days, but beyond it. And then everybody will get access to the best-selling book, Inspire, Consult, Sell. So you'll all get a signed, personalized copy from me, whether you want it or not. But the book is a really good way to go deep into the models. It really does consolidate all of the thinking and the structure and the communication process. And we've also got this PGA online, Practice Growth Academy online, where all of the content we cover throughout the 2 days is also available in short 10 to 15 minute bite-sized video modules. So if you want to go back at any point and say, what did we cover around questioning? What were the structure? How do we ask open questions? What are the questions? What's the questioning models? How do we position treatments? All of that information is available in short bite-sized chunks. You can go back and revisit it. You can revisit it with your team. You can talk to people in the practice so that everybody starts to really understand the optimal communication process and the models available. And then we have this really nice interactive toolkit. So we call it the Inspire Toolkit. It's an electronic document with all of the different stages of the process, all of the different elements of our program. You capture them all in this workbook. It's electronic. And it's electronic because it means you haven't got to carry paper around. It also means that if you want to share it and send it over as an electronic document with someone else in the practice, with your practice manager, with partners, associates, you can share it with people so that everybody starts to adopt this best practice approach. It's really simple. And it's been really effective for our corporate program. So we're bringing that to our open program as well. And then the other thing that we found is incredibly powerful is beyond the 2 days, to get our entire cohort together, everybody that's on the program, we've got 30 seats maximum. So to get everybody together and invite them then to 2 follow-up coaching workshops, so 90-minute coaching workshops, and they're 3 weeks after the original 2-day training. And then the second one is 3 weeks after that first follow-up call. And really the 90-minute workshop is about recapping on some of the principles, allowing the participants to start to talk about the successes, the wins, the progress they've made, but also to bring their life challenges to those 90-minute calls so that they can get some support and coaching for the more difficult situations, the more difficult patients, those maybe sometimes difficult conversations where they say, I'm struggling with how I articulate this or how I get this particular situation addressed. And so we'll give them coaching and direction about implementation and adoption of the model. So it goes way beyond just the 2-day training. And that's really important. We've noticed that really helps people to implement and adopt what we've said so they get the results and the transformation that they're looking for. And then beyond that, we do a lot of work with leadership and coaching models and with goal setting and practice transformation. So there'll be options beyond our initial session if people want to go on to mastermind courses and kind of become alumni of Focus4growth. We've got that as an option that will follow on from the training as we go beyond next year. So in terms of the first step for people on the call tonight, I'd love for you to access the patient experience scorecard. As I said, that's completely free for you. The link is here on the left-hand side of the screen. You'll see https:// as catchy as that is, patientexperience.scoreapp.com. And you just click on the link, register your details, answer the assessment statements, and you'll get your own personalized development report with specific recommendations of how you can improve your consults. And any of your team can run through that scorecard. Feel free to share it among team members as well. I mentioned our electronic toolkit. This is what it looks like. So you can see you've got a single document with all of these different document links, lots of actionable workbooks and worksheets that really help you start to structure every part of your consult, start to think about how do we build a high-performing practice, align our team to the work that we're doing to transform our consultation. So lots of really great content in here that helps you not just with your consults, but actually starts to get you thinking about growing the practice, growing your impact in your practice as well. So our Practice Growth Academy, what's the experience? 2-day workshop is the kickoff at this beautiful hotel called Y Boston Lakes Hotel in Cambridgeshire, plus the 2 90-minute group coaching sessions. We are limiting it to 30 places each session. The first launch session is on Friday, the 27th, and Saturday, the 28th of January. So only 1 day out of clinic and then a Saturday. Registration's now open. We have a 10% early booking discount that will end at the end of November. So if you are interested and you would like more details, then please feel free to contact me. I'll give you my contact details in a moment. There's a link on this slide here. And I wonder, Laurie, maybe we can put this in the chat at the end for people if we could. This is a booking link. If you wanted to book a short 30-minute one-to-one conversation about the Practice Growth Academy, then feel free to do that. I'm sure we'll be able to put this either in the follow-up email, or we might even be able to put it in a link for you here and now. I'll talk to Laurie when I've finished in a few minutes' time. But if anybody wants to have a check-in with me, please do feel free. And then finally, just to finish, I'd love to talk to you a bit more about something that we're doing in our business that's really important to us. So we have this mission in Focus4growth. My experience is inside and outside of dentistry, and I really am committed to bringing what we see as world-class business best practice to our clients in dentistry, so that we can inspire you and your teams to become market leaders in your communities, so that you make a more positive impact, not just in your communities, but if you want to think bigger, bigger impact in dentistry, bigger impact in the world. And I always think about these things as, if you really reach for the stars, go as big as you can. Think as big as you can. And as a team, we have these values, and that's our vision and mission. We have these values, and you'll see they spell out the word focus. So the F is being a force for good in our communities and in our marketplace. The O is about taking ownership, making sure that we own everything that we agree to, that we're responsible for our actions, and we really do think about our responsibility as business owners or as in my team, you know, marketers, our sales team. And then the C is about client-centered, about really thinking about making sure that everything we do has the client in mind, the customer in mind, because without clients, there is no business. Without patients, there is no practice, right? So really putting the client at the center of what we do, the decisions we make, the approaches that we take is really important. And then the final two are also important to us: unlimited potential, recognizing and communicating with our teams that actually there's so much more that can be achieved if we kind of unlock this ability to increase our potential, to think differently, to expand our worldview. And then the final one is about succeed or learn, you know, really reinterpreting failure as lessons to learn so that we succeed next time. It's really good for the mindset. It's good for growth of our business and for our clients' businesses. And we're also, we are proud sponsors and advocates for the United Nations Global Goals. I don't know if anybody's heard about these, but they're 17 goals that have been developed by world leaders to improve life on planet Earth for all of us. And what the UN recommend, the Global Goals Committee recommend, is that you select a goal that's particularly meaningful for you and for your business, and then you become a champion for it. And so for us, it's goal 8, decent work and economic growth. It's something we really believe we can impact positively. It's something we believe helps our clients to make their own impact. So that is our kind of, we're advocates, and we do a lot of work in this area. And we're also proud members of Pledge 1%. We pledge 1% of time and resources to good causes, both in the marketplace and in our local community. One of the ways I do that personally, and I'll share this with you because it's something I'm very proud of, I lead a walking group for men called Walk and Talk for Men in Cambridgeshire. It's a group I've founded coming up for 2 years ago now. And I did it because it's something that is personally important, and I have a strong emotional connection to men's mental health, having had some challenges myself back in 2016-17 before I left the corporate world, and realized that, you know, the provision of mental health services is really quite limited for a lot of people, in particular for men, because men don't tend to talk about their problems, their issues. They tend to bottle it up, and then before you know it, you know, people find themselves in really difficult situations, and some people make some really harsh decisions. Sadly, the suicide rate is increasing, and 3 in 4 suicides are men. So it's a really disproportionate effect on men. So one of the things that I'm committed to is helping men in my local community to get support, to be able to proactively seek out a community that can help them and signpost them to the right resources, and help them to realize that you know, there are ways in which we can start to cope, think differently, and start to see, you know, the positive opportunity that exists in life for all of us. It's been a really incredible experience. We have now regularly, you'll see our group here, we have, you know, 25 to 35 men join us on a fortnightly basis, and it's become a real, you know, it's a real pillar of our local community. We connecting with local GP and healthcare services, local mental health provision. And I share this with you because it's something I started as a passion project, but it's also become something that is really good for me personally. It's good for my team. It's good for my local community. It's been good for my business. And I didn't do it for that reason, but there are no downsides to thinking about how you personally and your teams can start to make a positive impact in your local community. And my business isn't as local as perhaps some of your practices are, but when you start to lean into these initiatives that make an impact in your local community, they really do start to resonate. They change the dynamic, and they give you this, you know, just this differentiation from anybody else that starts to set you apart in your local communities. I hope that final part has also inspired you to think differently and to think specifically, you know, how will you make a positive impact in your communities, in your practice, and, you know, if you want to go even further in the world. And so I share that with you as a final thought. Please do feel free to connect with me, scan the code, or email me at justinleigh@focus4growth.co.uk. Check out the website, check out my social channels. I would really, really love to hear from you. And if we can help you and your practice, then please do feel free to contact me. We also have a weekly inspiring email that we send to our customers and clients. If you'd like to sign up for that, there's a link here on this slide. It's a bit.ly link, dental-webinar-sign-up. Again, catchy title there. So my contact details are on the slide as well. Feel free, if you do want to get in touch, genuinely, if you'd like to get in touch with me, if I can help you, I would love to. If you'd like to be part of our Practice Growth Academy, you would be incredibly welcome. You get a very, very warm welcome from me and from my teams. Okay, we are, look at that. Wow, we're at 8:05, so we're an hour and 5 minutes in. So about right. I've got some great questions coming through on the questions tab. So I'll start to look at those. And Laurie, who is also in the background here. Laurie, there was a link in that slide. I don't know if it is possible to share it with the group.
Justin, we can do that, but I need you to send me the link, please, quickly. You can either WhatsApp that to me or email, and we'll get that sorted out. Okay, brilliant. I'll tell you what I'll do. I'll read a couple of questions in the background, and I'll try and do that while I'm multitasking behind the scenes, Laurie. How's that? Perfect. And we'll put all of the links in the follow-up email for everybody as well. So they'll be able to sign up to the newsletter, the scorecard app, and of course, your one-to-one calls. Brilliant. Thank you, Laurie. I really appreciate that. Great. Sounds super. Okay, so let me start with some questions. So thank you, everybody, for hanging on till the end. I appreciate it. And thank you also for your great questions. I've also had some great support on here. There's nothing like technical difficulties to let us all know it's live. Thank you, Anna. That's very good of you. Okay. Tuyab says, great advice on asking the right questions. I've definitely experienced that. I always hate discussing price with patients, but we'll definitely work on the questioning structure. Thank you. And the pricing thing, discussing price, when you think about what we've covered this evening, if your consults don't follow that structure that we've covered this evening, when it comes to discussing price, it's going to feel really awkward. Right? If you follow a really well-structured, patient-centered process like the one we've talked about this evening, when it comes to the price discussion, you're going to feel really confident. The patient's going to feel really accepting of it, and everything's going to flow. So what I would say is when we isolate the pricing discussion as an issue, actually, that's not the problem. The problem is that we don't feel confident in the consultation and the structure and the communication process. When you resolve that more strategic problem for you and for your teams, then all of a sudden pricing just feels natural. It's a natural flow through the discussion. And you heard how we talked about the pre-commitment stage earlier. That is learning those principles, those simple changes that can help you start to feel much more confident talking about price. So hopefully you're seeing that as a kind of opportunity for your own consults as well. Lots of key takeaways. Well, thank you all so much for your key takeaways. Anna, also you mentioned being inspiring is a great way to lead patients. So thank you, Anna. That's great. Caroline says her key takeaway is to listen. Absolutely. Thank you, Caroline. Jyoti says, my takeaway is to be more mindful of demonstrating value to patients. Yeah, thank you, Jyoti. And the really thinking about value to patients is always linked to what the patient needs. Okay, so value, demonstrating value has to be and is always linked to understanding and linking to patients' needs. Right, that's a key kind of component and principle that we have to follow. Anna, I'll be trying to help my team to communicate more clearly with patients. Yeah, thank you. So Anna, you're clearly a practice principal or senior in the practice, so helping your team with that communication. Thank you. Yukiaho, sorry, I'm pronouncing that terribly. Please forgive me. Yuki, there you go, Yuki. A question: how would you plant the seed with a patient as a way of sale, rather than being too pushy? How would you plant the seed? So I hope this makes sense to you, Yuki, but for me, the planting of the seed is following the process. So we talked earlier, when we looked at the process, we talked about insights. So once you've established the rapport with the patient, you're prepared, you know the different information that you need in order to prepare for that consultation. The insight is exactly that. It is the seed. So if a patient, let's take Invisalign, for example, one of the things that you can do to start to plant seeds of patients is to let them know, I don't know if you realize, but Invisalign have just surpassed 14 million patients worldwide. So there are now more than 14 million patients have had clear aligner treatment from Invisalign. So this really is such a tried, tested and proven technology now. So that's a seed that starts to get the patient thinking, wow, this is actually more popular than I realized. There's a lot of people doing it. And that just gives confidence and credibility for you and for the patient. So there's lots of ways that you can plant seeds and then follow the structure of the sales process. That would be my advice, Yuki. I hope that answers your question. Please drop another one in there if not. Anna says, how can we receive the link to the scorecard, please? This was excellent. Oh, thank you, Anna. And that's Anna. I think we know each other, Anna, off Facebook as well. So thank you so much for joining this evening, Anna. So Laurie, if I wanted to send you a couple of links, is it best to do it can I do it on here, or do I need to do it on WhatsApp, Laurie? What's the best way to do it?
So you can do it on the presenter only chat here, or you can drop me an email, Justin, or whatever way is easiest for you.
Let me just drop you a couple of links, Laurie. Hold on a sec. So if I've got sorry for my technical incompetence, everybody. Laurie, where's my presenter only chat? Right, got it. Hold on. Let me send you. So Laurie, I'm going to send you a couple of links. That one I just sent you was the link to book. If somebody wants to book half an hour with me, then that is the link to follow. Let me just share the patient experience scorecard for Anna and anybody else who would like to see that. So let me share patient experience scorecard with you as well. Perfect. One other link, Laurie. I'll also share my Linktree link with you as well. So if anybody wants to connect with me on socials, then you can do that as well. Is that okay? Have you got those? Have they come through okay, Laurie?
Yep, those have all been received, Justin. We're just getting that out to everybody now. And at the end of the webinar, we'll send everybody to the landing page to book a 30-minute strategy session with you.
Perfect. Thank you very much. I appreciate it, Laurie. That's great. Super. So thanks, everybody, for your questions. Let me just check that I haven't got anything else that needs to be resolved. Let me have a look. Michael, thank you for what Michael says. Thank you for a great presentation. My takeaway is to work harder. Thank you, Michael. Love it. You know what? You can never work too hard, right? But just do the right things while you're working hard. Great work, Michael. Thank you. And Michael says you're definitely a force for good. I've seen the mental health walks. Thank you. I don't know where you're based, Michael. If you're Cambridgeshire, you are very welcome to join us at some point. Michael, I've got a couple of other questions. So let's have a look. Sorry. So Anna's a practice manager. So she said, you mentioned being inspiring is a great way to lead patients to sales. What can practice management or leaders do to coach associates and TCOs to be inspirational? Ooh, Anna, what a great question. So here's how I would think about that, Anna. Think about it as a series of conversations. Okay, so people probably aren't going to go from being functional to inspirational overnight. So start with a seed. I think it was Yuki said earlier, how would you plant seeds? Think about planting seeds. It's a great metaphor. So you might want to start with a conversation with your associates, your TCOs, in maybe one of your practice meetings, maybe one of the regular practice meetings. Just start to plant this seed about, we'd like to start to think about how we go from functional to inspirational. And just ask the question of your team. Just say, what do you think? What could we be doing? You could share some of your ideas, but get them to start to think about it. And if you make that a regular theme of, or an agenda item through your practice meetings, through your discussions, people are going to start to come up with some ideas, and then they'll start to try them.
And then you'll start to see this kind of ripple effect of best practice that starts to flow through the practice. But it starts with that initial intent to get people to think, right, we're going to make a change from what we do today to something that's different, perhaps more inspirational, and use language that works for you, and just kind of work on it day by day, week by week, month by month, and proliferate and share the best practice as people start to make progress. And really important, as people start to make progress, recognize it. Tell people, I really like the way you had that conversation. I really like this change you've implemented. I really like that suggestion. I've noticed this improvement, because what gets recognized gets repeated. Don't recognize things, people don't repeat it. So really important that you start with, the intention, coach it from your team by asking them for their suggestions, recognize it when you see the change, and that starts to get the behaviors repeated and embedded in practice. I hope that answers your question, and a great question. Thank you so much for that. Okay, Maria says, do you have any tips on how we might spot attentive patients? Do you think that it would alienate patients that come in aware if we treat them as unaware? Oh, nice. So great. What a great question, Maria. So Maria is linking back to our patient journey and thinking about patients that start unaware, go to, attentive, then interested, etc. Okay. Any tips on how we might spot attentive patients? So patients that are asking questions, patients that are talking about specific treatments already, they're absolutely patients that are attentive. But don't mistake attentive for interested, or patients with desire, or patients ready to take action. I would say always work back through the process, and the speed at which you can work through those stages will depend on where the patient is in their mind and through the decisions they've already made. But you'll sense that quite quickly as you start to use this structure. So there's no danger in going backwards a step. So back to your question, Maria, do you think it would alienate patients who come in aware if we treat them as unaware? As long as you don't hang around the unaware stage and just keep kind of delivering insights, when actually the patient says, well, I've done some research on this. I'm pretty convinced I know what I want. I'm just like a bit more information. It's at that point when you go, okay, insights are probably out the window. You might just say, we can definitely give you the information. Tell me a bit more about, what are you thinking about? What have you learned so far? What outcome are you looking for? What reservations might you have? What considerations have you? So you just ask the right questions, and you'll nurture the patient through that process. I would say there's very low risk in treating patients as unaware if they are aware or attentive. There's high risk in trying to treat a patient who is only attentive or interested as a patient who's ready to take action. So always err on the side of caution. I hope that helps, Maria. Thank you for the great question. Brilliant. Michael, I've been wondering about tire kicker patients, but I'm starting to think it might not be them not wanting to commit, but my approach being weak or not being the right approach. Without the detail, Michael, I think you could be right. When I know what you mean. What you mean is patients coming in, having a conversation, taking up time, and then not making a decision. My advice, go back through the process. Really think about the consult, the stages of the conversation that you're having. If you're going through this consultation process, so you're connecting with the patient first, always establish rapport. You've got a plan, you know all your detail. You are delivering some insights that get the patient to think, okay, that's interesting. You're then asking them great questions about, the treatment, what's led them here right now. What are the key priorities for them? What outcome are they looking for? What reservations have they got? What support do they need to make the right decision? And then presenting treatment that links to what they've told you, and doing that in a way where you sense the patient's engagement, you see that they're excited, and then asking the pre-commitment question. If you're doing all of that and you're still getting tire kickers, then there's something there's something else you need to address. But go back to that fundamental structure first. And if you go through that structure, you'll start to eliminate the tire kickers, because actually they'll become patients that commit. So hope that answers your question, Michael. But thank you again. It's really good. Okay, let's have a look. What else have we got? Yuki, could you please confirm the structure, i.e. 1, explain to the patient the situation, 2, show patient the value and insights, 3, the price? Yes, so let me go back through the structure. I think I just did it, Yuki, but let me do it again. Connect with the patient first. Always make sure you've got a relationship with the patient. Then deliver some form of insight, so something that the patient doesn't know about treatment. Maybe that it is, it's a process that it involves a laboratory, or it's a treatment that has had 14 million patients. So it's really, it's really well proven. So you just start to get the patient going, okay, that's interesting. They lean in. Then you ask questions about what the patient needs. That's the big stage that everybody misses. Great questions. Listen to the patient. Once the patient's articulated their needs, then you start to talk about treatment solutions, and you think about, what does the product do? What does the treatment do? You think about the advantage for the patient, and then you think about the value for the patient based on what they told you they need. Then you ask for commitment. Okay, so that's the stages. And in the commitment stage, you talk about price. Okay, so commitment for, in principle, are you ready to make a decision today? Patient says yes. We say, okay, great. Let's talk about how it works. We talk about price, talk about treatment options, talk about value, but we only do that once we've got the patient who has said, yes, in principle, it sounds like something I'd like to do. Okay. Okay, good. Hope that helps. Yuki, thank you. Sarah, thank you so much. This isn't really a question, but just an acknowledgement of the power of being silent and listening. Thank you, Sarah. Yeah. Also, I love the pull, not the push advice. The kind approach to inspire is very uplifting. Thank you, Sarah. I genuinely have found that myself, both in a sales context, dealing with clients, but then also working with clients to inspire patients as well. It really does help when you use this approach. It's so much more. It builds confidence for you, builds confidence for patients. It really does improve the way in which you're able to communicate, but also the way in which patients are able to engage and make a commitment to you. Okay, thank you everybody so much. Let me just check. Laurie, can I just check that I haven't missed any questions?
I think that's a very thorough coverage, Justin, of all the questions we've had in this evening.
Thanks, Laurie. That's great. So all that remains is for me to wish everybody a huge thank you and just say I'm very grateful that you hung around until the end. I know that spending your evenings on webinars isn't always the ideal evening. It's not certainly in my top 3. Probably makes number 4, but not my top 3. So thank you all so much for your engagement. Thank you for the questions. Thank you for hanging on in there when I had my technical issues as well. I'm glad we were able to resolve them. Thank you, Laurie, for the support and the help. I probably wouldn't have thought of that. So thank you, Laurie. I appreciate it. And if anybody would like to get hold of me, I think, Laurie, you'll communicate the links that we shared. Feel free to connect with me on socials. Do please feel free to take the scorecard. It's completely free of charge. If you'd like to sign up to our mailing list, actually, if you take the scorecard, I'll sign you up to the mailing list. There's a deal. And if you'd like to book a short 30-minute session with me to talk about your practice, to talk about the program, I would be delighted to speak to you as well. So I think that is everything. Just make sure nothing final has come in before we finish. Caroline. Caroline, that's very kind of you. Thank you so much for a great presentation. So inspiring. Thank you, Caroline. I really appreciate that positive feedback. I'm delighted with that. Thank you. So, Laurie, sad to say, we're going to end it. Anna says, this was awesome. Thanks again, Justin. Thank you, Anna. Lovely to hear from you. I hope you're feeling okay. Laurie, is that a wrap?
That's a wrap, Justin. Thank you so much for being here on behalf of FMC and Dentistry Webinars. Thank you for everybody attending, and we'll see you all again soon. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Laurie. Thank you, everybody. Take care. See you all soon. Thank you.